Hi, and welcome. This video is just to talk a little bit about how to read the theology of T.F. Torrance. So if you watched my first video before this one, I went and tried to explain Torrance's theology in 5 minutes, just kind of gave you a few points that I think are important to know about Torrance and that kind of just to dip your toe a little bit into his theology. But in this video, I just want to talk about actually what the point of that video was, and that is to read Torrance for yourself. And so I always hope that people actually go to the source and read these theologians for themselves. So I just want to explain some of the literature and my approach to and recommendations for how you might do that. Now, the first book, the main book that I really recommend for newbies in Torrance's thought is The Mediation of Christ. It's really an excellent, short, 100 pages or so book that really does a great job of getting to the heart of Torrance's theology. So it's an excellent book. Highly recommend it. It can be a bit dense. There's other works that are a little bit more clear and plain, but it's an excellent one to start with. So I'd say that's probably the best place to start. Alongside that, I also say Preaching Christ Today is really good. This is another short one and a little bit clearer to understand maybe than The Mediation of Christ. Now, along the theological themes here, two of his best, I'd say, theological books, probably his masterpieces in theology. The Christian Doctrine of God is probably my favorite of those. This is, I'd say, the summation of all of his work on the theological side of things. So I'd highly recommend this if you're really looking for a deeper dive into his work. It's really great. It gets to the heart of Torrance's theology. The other one is The Trinitarian Faith. This is another one. It's a bit dense. It has a similar subject as the Christian Doctrine of God, but he really goes into the Church Fathers a bit more. Torrance really relied heavily on a lot of the fathers, especially Athanasius was his favorite. He once said that he's not a Bardian, he's an Athanasian, so he's a lot more indebted to Athanasius than necessarily he even is to Bart, according to his own admission. So this kind of reflects that. He goes a lot into the fathers, and it's good, it's dense, it's a bit longer, but it's also really great. Now, I'd also mention the two volumes published posthumously. Big Doorstoppers, Incarnation, Atonement. These are compiled from some lecture notes. So Torrance didn't actually write these himself. Like I said, they were published after he passed. But these are really good. The notes throughout, the editing is excellent in these. So these are a great set to have, and really good. There's a lot of great stuff in here. But like I said, Robert Walker did an excellent job editing these. So he has some great explanation notes in here. So another one I'd recommend. Now, the other side of Torrance's theology is some of its more scientific thrust, we could say. So his development of a scientific theology. So this is a very fascinating aspect. We didn't talk about this much in my 5-minute video, but just to briefly give you two recommendations, I'd say the Reality in Scientific Theology is a great one-stop for this. It's a really good one. It's about 200 or so pages, quite dense, but it's really nice. It'll give you a good understanding of this element. So will Christian Theology and Scientific Culture. If you can read that, these hardback ones are hard. Christian Theology and Scientific Culture. This is a little bit more approachable, but also gets to the heart of that idea as well. Now, Torrance's actually his masterpiece for this is the 2 volumes, Theological Science, which is really dense and a bit hard to understand on the first pass, but if you're really interested in the scientific aspect of his theology, that's great. But then God and Rationality is kind of part 2 to that, and that's actually, I like this one a little bit more, so this is also excellent. Now, as far as secondary literature is concerned, unfortunately, Torrance doesn't really receive as much attention as I feel like he should. Someone like Bart has just libraries full of books that have been written on him. Torrance, there's maybe a handful of them, but there's several that are very good. I don't have the physical copy of it, but Alistair McGrath's biography of Torrance is excellent, and so I recommend reading that. The other book I'd say, let's start with this one. How to Read T.F. Torrance is just a classic go-to book. Really good. Does a good job as a scholar to go through each section, so I recommend that one. The Promise of Trinitarian Theology is also really good. It's different theologians in dialogue with Torrance, and he actually responds to some of them in here. And so this is a good solid book. Another one I really liked was Andrew Purves, however you say it, sorry, Exploring Christology and Atonement. So he studies a few different theologians, but his work on Torrance's and this is really excellent, especially in relation to Torrance's understanding of atonement, which is extremely fascinating and really important. And I go into great detail in my book about that, which leads me to this. Obviously, I would recommend my own work. My book tries to just capture Torrance's thought in a very simple way, but not without being overly reductionistic here. So I really hope I was able to do that. And I do get into his scientific theology. It's not really my expertise, but I tried to get into it more from the theologian's perspective of what Torrance was trying to do. And then I also get into all the points that I talked about in that 5-minute video. So with that said, that's kind of how I'd say you could read T.F. Torrance for yourself. He has a lot of really fascinating books out there. I don't think you can go wrong with really any of them. There's some that are a little bit more dry and a little bit more, he's wrestling with ideas that maybe aren't as relevant for today, or dealing with controversies that were more specific to his time. But the ones I listed here are great. Now I'll link all of these below in the comment section, so you can feel free to check those out. I'll add some if I have forgotten any in this video. But for now, I just say thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment if you have anything to say. But hope you have a great day.